This is going to be a transformative video if you're an individual who is still struggling with addiction, and it could be any addiction from adult material to even smoking cigarettes. Could the root cause of this be purely a nutritional deficiency? So I'm just going to give my introduction here and then give some credit to the individual who actually proposed this particular idea. So bear with me here. This is going to be educational. It's not going to be entertaining. I'll throw in some jokes here and there to keep the levity up, but bear with me. So millions of people struggle with specifically adult material addiction, cycling through that shame, the promises to quit, and then, the inevitable relapse that comes subsequently afterwards. While most treatment does focus on willpower and discipline, and, you just got to force your way through it, behavior changes, emerging research actually points to a surprising biological factor, which could be an absence of vitamin B3 or niacin. And I'll get to that specifically. So niacin deficiency causes tryptophan deficiency, one of our essential amino acids we can't really create naturally. It's got many different functions. I might actually do a video specifically on niacin later. If that's something that you'd be interested, leave some comments below. But the most significant one in this case is that it's a precursor to serotonin, and this is our mood stabilizer. Now, a serotonin deficiency can cause dopamine hyperactivity, which causes impulsivity and susceptibility to addiction. So no niacin, no tryptophan, no serotonin, leading to impulsivity and forever that chasing cycle of the next hit. Chasing the dragon, I think, is a phrase that has been used in these particular circles. So the idea is fix it at the source, fix it with niacin. Now, I came across this Reddit post by The Last Man or Last Men. If you type in niacin Last Man on Reddit, you'll be able to get the full picture. I did take a lot of his content and kind of spliced it together with mine to add a little bit more color and brevity. But I'll just detail what this particular gentleman is describing here. So he actually describes it as a form of self-medication, a Nietzschean narcotic for those who lack a clear value system, avoiding that trap by consciously articulating your values. So if you're struggling with that particular concept, this is a phrase that is very famous by Friedrich Nietzsche. He who has a why can bear any how. A lot of the problem you can attribute in most people is due to not having a strong why. Why should I quit this habit that gives me a lot of sexual satisfaction? If you don't have that why, the how doesn't really work. And he added another cool quote in from Romans 7:19. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. And that is going to be a consequence of not having that value pyramid in order. This individual prefaces by saying that they've never given up. They read a lot of philosophy as well as listening to old lectures from Earl Nightingale and Neville Goddard. Would highly recommend those two individuals. They became convinced that there was a solution to the problem of relapsing, and I willed myself to keep searching for that particular answer. Failure after failure, disappointment after disappointment, I finally found the final piece of knowledge which made it all click together. After putting it into a trial in my own life, I am happy to share that which has brought me to adherence to retention and NoFap, which I've been striving towards for over 4 years since I first tried to quit. So this is introducing this individual's 3-part model of behavioral addiction. There is some rationality that goes into this, guys. Again, it's more educational and informative than it is entertaining. He does preface this by saying that they're not a doctor, philosopher, or prophet, and as such, none of the information within this model is entirely new, but I believe that I am the first lad to connect the dots, as it were, and put it all together and then attempt to share it with those who might benefit from it. And I just want to extend my appreciation because I really think there's a lot of value and merit in this particular idea. So part 1, I'll try and zoom in, so this might get a little bit overwhelming. I'll try and zoom in here. So part 1, porn addiction is as a disease itself. So it's characterized by this positive feedback loop by which one exposure to erotic material makes the individual more likely to view it again. Now, the significant chemistry to this is that it starts to erode the prefrontal cortex, choking and shrinking this region of the brain so that decision making becomes impaired. I've made several videos on this previously, but the cliff notes, as it were, of this is your prefrontal cortex is your decision making, it's your logical, it's your rational. It is also referred to as top-down control, in that everything comes through the prefrontal cortex. And if this is weak, impaired, or has any chemical imbalances, then behavior modification is going to be very, very challenging for yourself. Some exercises that enhance prefrontal cortex strength, meditation, breath work, some of the aforementioned practices that we discuss on this channel. So PMO, porn, masturbation, orgasm as a whole, causes a slew of negative hormonal changes which sap the energy and a will from the man, thus making him feel worse and more likely to seek out what adult material has to offer. It desensitizes us to dopamine, resulting in an inability to appreciate and engage with the real world, also obliterating motivation. So those novel things that we initially found very pleasurable, a walk in the park, listening to music, no longer have that same pull and that same zeal. While this all may be true and important, the only real actionable information above is the recognition of the positive feedback loop of this addiction, which makes any form of media which displays images of attractive women very, very dangerous. So we'll go into the second part here, part 2. It's a symptom of a disease, a nutritional deficiency specifically. So this is where the theory of this individual starts to come in, where they say things get interesting. Low serotonin levels cause a condition called dopamine hyperactivity, the symptoms of which are included such as impaired decision-making, impulsivity, and increased susceptibility to addiction. This is my little addition to this. I quite like this analogy. Think of your brain's reward system like a car with both an accelerator, which is a representation of dopamine, and a brake, which is serotonin. When everything is working correctly, these two systems, they kind of complement each other and balance things out. So dopamine says, let's go for it, hit the accelerator. Serotonin says, there is a red light, we might kill ourselves. This is because serotonin acts as a regulator for dopamine, both at the origin midbrain and at a terminal forebrain. This means that serotonin directly modulates the quantity of dopamine in the brain, but also the degree to which it is bioactive. Now, he did his research. There's a lot of articles here in which he has personally gone through. I'm leaving these in. I'm just going to put this on screen in case you want to look at these articles yourselves. But again, it is quite heavy. I did go through these myself and just try to see if the neurochemistry adds up in this case, and it does. Here's my very, very brief conclusion of these particular notes, especially the first article here. Simple conclusion: serotonin's role, regulate mood and behavior, low levels linked to increased impulsive aggression. Dopamine's role, pleasure and reward, high levels of dopamine can lead to heightened impulsive behaviors. Brain regions involved, prefrontal, a part of the brain responsible for decision-making and impulse control, relies on balance between serotonin and dopamine. The imbalance effects, where serotonin levels are low, dopamine activity can become excessive, leading to impulsivity, which contribute to other conditions such as depression and substance use. So nothing too out of the ordinary there, but I just want to consolidate his initial premise is very, very accurate. So let's move on from this point. This is some more low levels of serotonin, increased ability to delay gratification and decreased sense of well-being in its own right, as well as negatively affecting sleep, gut absorption, so nutritional deficiency starting to come in. So fundamentally, the question is, what causes this deficiency? This is an interesting infographic showing the process in which tryptophan is converted to hydroxytryptophan into serotonin. So, these particular things are essential to be the precursors of serotonin. However, it's not as simple as that. You can see that tryptophan is the foundational ingredient in the biosynthesis of serotonin. As it turns out, tryptophan is actually a limited resource in the body, an essential amino acid, as I prefaced, which cannot be produced endogenously and must be obtained through diet. Now, the average person is only eating about 1 gram a day. What is the optimal? That is the question to which will make or break your addiction. Now, the answer is NAD, which is the active form of niacin, also known as the third water-soluble vitamin B3. So NAD is absolutely essential to the body, but the average diet intake is very low due to the addition of niacin equivalent to the food supply, such as niacinamide, which actually increases the need for genuine niacin. Additionally, factors such as genetic pressure, selecting genes associated with schizophrenia. I'm not going to go into this too comprehensively. Essentially, what he's describing here is that there are other chronic conditions which can also benefit from niacin. Long story short, your body can produce 1 milligram of niacin from 60 milligrams of tryptophan at the expense of B2 and B6 and iron. Use of this pathway also produces potentially damaging effects to metabolites. In short, using this pathway puts immense pressure on your limited supply of tryptophan and damages your health over time in the process. For that reason, just supplementing tryptophan is not the answer. So you can kind of see here tryptophan and the conversions into nicotinic acid, niacin, NAD, the active form of niacin. So let's talk about niacin compared to niacin. Now, some of you might be familiar with niacin. This actually might be something that you have experienced. This is the only means of addressing the whole chain of cascading issues from the source. You don't want to treat symptoms, you want to treat the underlying pathology. And that can be done by simply making sure that you get enough niacin. Now, the conditions are the flush niacin is the essential one, is the one that you want to get, and that's the effective one, and that's the safe one. All other forms, including non-flush, overpriced anti-aging metabolites and precursors, only aggravate the pathology due to the use of salvage pathways and overloading of niacinamide, as well as depleting the folate. You can check out, I think this gentleman actually did a video. I actually didn't see the video, but again, if you search Last Man niacin, you'll be able to find it. So this is the niacin flush. I'll just briefly talk about my experiences with niacin. The flush is perhaps the only negative consequence of taking niacin. It has a vasodilation effect, especially around the peripheries and the face. It's uncomfortable. It's not something I particularly look forward to. There are some people that do, kind of strange. But the onset is very quick. Within 5 to 10 minutes of ingesting niacin on an empty stomach, you will experience symptoms that look like the one on screen. And it lasts for about, I suppose it varies from person to person, but maybe 20 minutes, half an hour maximum, I would personally say. It feels uncomfortable, as I mentioned. It's kind of, what it reminds me of is it's kind of like sunburn. Like if you probably would have had those days where you've laid out in the sun and then you come back inside after being on the beach all day. And you know how your face kind of radiates heat. You can kind of put your hand here and you can feel the heat radiating as the body is trying to get rid of the excess heat. That's kind of what a niacin flush feels like, but for only 20 minutes. So I would advise, if you are doing a niacin flush, do it where you don't have to do anything too focused and maybe not in public, because you will look very, very blotchy. It will be very, very obvious that your skin is flushing. There's some other interesting individuals like Abraham Hoffa, who is a famous Canadian physician who used niacin to treat thousands of patients and recommended low dosage so they get used to the skin flushing, and then they can escalate it. So I would go slowly to start and then kind of build up. The flush has a therapeutic effect in and of itself. If you you will develop a tolerance to it in about a week. But again, we're looking for the flush form, not the no flush. There's some other interesting things you can do, such as glutamine supplementation, which has a synergistic effect. as it is involved in the conversion of niacin to NAD, the active form we're looking for. Make sure you familiarize yourself with niacin before you take it, because some people, again, can find the flush very, very uncomfortable. There's a reference to Niacin, the Real Story by Hoffer and Associates, which can give you, again, a little bit more direction if this is something that you are going to do. So the final form, and we're nearly at the end of the video, gentlemen, he's putting forth the idea, because watching adult material increases endorphins, the body's natural painkillers, some people may rely on this for self-medication. He doesn't rely on this as a complete theory in and of itself, but there's famous studies done on monkeys who do not have readily form addictions, the high status ones don't, and the low status ones do. And that rats is stimulating social environments also don't form addictions, which rats in isolation do. So it's kind of leaning in towards this idea that there is a significant relationship interplay between serotonin and dopamine that, if healthy, shouldn't incur any consequences on addictive tendencies. I take it that in order to avoid self-medicating, we must consciously articulate our values and adopt a life-affirming philosophy, and realize that there is a sensible timeline for our lives with mastery of space and self coming before mating. Society has tricked young men into thinking that is the be-all and end-all, which is an incomplete idea. So, in conclusion, framed in a utilitarian manner, understand that seeing any erotic stimulus, such as social media, will feed this positive loop. Some alcoholics can never take a sip again, some can. If you supplement niacin and work up to 500 milligrams a day, this could offset some of this particular addictive tendencies and impulsive behavior. He mentions, again, this isn't medical advice. Do your own research. I'm going to look into this a little bit more extensively and see what else I can bring. But the pathway makes a lot of sense to me. If the root cause of the impulsivity to feel good and feel gratified is actually a consequence of low serotonin, then this looks like a home run in theory. But I'll leave that up to you, gentlemen. Are these theories? Are these facts? Speak soon.